My name is Brian Harrington. I'm a member of the Wood Library Museum Board of Trustees, and it's a pleasure to be here today, October 10th, 2025, in San Antonio, Texas. I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Robert Johnstone, who is another member of the ASA Wood Library Museum Board of Trustees. We go back probably a couple of decades, including the Wood Library Museum as well as the ASA Board of Directors. So let's start out talking about how things began here. Most people would, when they think about you, Dr. Johnstone, they would think about West Virginia. Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up?
Well, I can do that. First, let me say what an honor it is to be interviewed by you. So thank you. We do go back quite a ways, and you've really held the state of Montana together, the anesthesia there. I grew up in Vermont and spent most of my formative years in Cincinnati. So that would be my beginning.
So where did you go to college?
I went to Cornell. I majored in physics, and it was a great experience, great time to be at Cornell. And in physics, we had several Nobel laureates there. Richard Feynman, who invented electrodynamics, Hans Bethe from the Manhattan Project, and it was very intimidating, and I think I learned pretty quickly that I wasn't Nobel laureate material, so I was looking for something new and eventually found it.
Did you have intention of going into medicine when you went to Cornell?
I don't think so. My father was an obstetrician, and my grandfather was a physician, a country doctor, family physician, general practitioner, I guess. So maybe that was somewhere there, but I loved science, and I loved physics. I felt like that was the ultimate truths in the world. So I probably, if you'd asked me in my early college days, I would have said physics, but I am so glad I migrated to medicine.
So you went into medicine. What drew you to anesthesiology in particular?
Life is serendipitous, as you know. I loved summer jobs, and I got a summer job between my junior and senior year in college as a scrub tech at the VA hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio. And what a wonderful experience that was. I befriended the anesthesia department after holding retractors for 3 or 4 hours, looking over the ether screen at the people who seemed to be really enjoying life, anesthesia team. I befriended them, and they were very nice to me. They let me attend their weekly meetings. The VA hospital was part of the University of Cincinnati system. And I actually gave some physics lectures as a college student. And that was really neat. That was first time I'd ever been able to do something like that. I was sold after that college summer on anesthesia.
Now, your father was a prominent obstetrician and gynecologist. Were you drawn to OBGYN?
He worked all the time. He was in a 2-person practice and had a great father. It seemed like I didn't see him much, that he was on call every other night. And as you know, more babies are delivered at night than during the daytime, especially before the days of inductions. And I think that would have been lower on my choice. But of course, I did have a love of OB, but maybe needed something else.
So tell us about your anesthesia training. When and where did you train?
Well, I trained at University of Pennsylvania, but I migrated after that year, after that summer, when I knew I wanted to go into anesthesia. When I entered medical school, the first day entering medical school, I knew anesthesia was going to be my choice. So I would say my actual training probably started then. I befriended some of the anesthesiologists. I did my undergraduate work at Ohio State and got my first publications in anesthesia, and my first speaking opportunities while a medical student in anesthesia. So, and they were the ones that educated me about Penn, where Robert Dripps, one of the most famous anesthesiologists, most influential in the country at the time, was practicing. So they helped me, steered me there. And what a wonderful choice. I spent 3 years there, did my anesthesia training, did a research year. Faculty were great, and it launched my whole career.
Were there any specific mentors at Penn that really you feel sort of molded your career as an anesthesiologist?
Yes, of course. I think everybody is guided by mentors, and I was too. First, Robert Dripps, what an impressive person he was. He was a gentleman. He was already famous when I knew him, had published many books and articles, had the leading selling textbook in the country. He was so kind to me, and of course he called us all by our last names. I was Dr. Johnstone, and I really admired him, and if he would be a role model. I guess two other people that were very influential to me would be first Ted Smith, who I joined his research team and got quite a few publications with him. His team was very good, and it led me to probably the first big milestone in my whole anesthesia career. I won the resident research essay because of research I did in his lab. So it was just spectacular, and I really appreciated him. The other one I would say would be Brett Gucci, who was the led OB anesthesia, and he was very active in overseas anesthesia. So I did extra time, extra rotations in OB because I admired him so much. And then when he was part of Project Hope, so when he left for 2 months, I got special permission to go down to the Good Ship Hope, which was located in Maceió, Brazil. And I spent 2 months there. And one of the things that I remember so much about that trip is it was, I had to take my written board exam that's all given on the same date everywhere in the country. So I got special permission from the American Board of Anesthesiology. They sent the written board exam down, sent it to Project Hope, and I took it in the captain's ship, captain's quarters. So it was those were two formative people in my career.
Now, you also spent some time in the military. Can you comment on how that maybe formed you both personally and professionally?
You know, I've been so fortunate in life, and I would say that my Army career was something else that was fortunate. I finished training during the Vietnam war era. I'd been deferred, what they called Berry Plan then, deferred through my specialty training if I went in. And I was really unsure because there was the hippie protest movement was going on, and a lot of opposition to the Vietnam War. But most of the men in my family have served in the military. My father did too. He was in World War II in the Army. And so I joined the Army. And what a wonderful thing. Of course, the Army is always a little unpredictable. I was already a fully trained anesthesiologist. I went in, reported, they assigned me to Fort Rucker, And they said, well, we got an anesthesiologist here, a couple of them right now. We'll make you a flight surgeon. So I went through flight surgery training, got on flight status, did things that you couldn't pay to do. I don't know, I had ejection seat training, that type of stuff. And was on flight status. So I did some anesthesia research during my active duty days, did moonlighting in the emergency rooms, which made me a better physician. It was spectacular. Let's see, the other thing, there was what they called the GI Bill of Benefits. And I used that. They would pay for education. So I was at Fort Rucker in Dothan, Alabama, and I needed the only university there, Troy State University, had a business school. So I went through their MBA program, and courtesy of the Army. So it was just spectacular. When I came out after finishing a couple of years, I looked for a reserve spot. I wanted to be a flight surgeon in the Air Force to some fighter unit, because they always treat their flight surgeons well, but there were no opportunities for me then. So I stayed out until I went to West Virginia University, ran into a program called Individual Mobilization Augmentee. So I was a reservist for about 15 years, did 2 weeks somewhere in the United States. And what a great opportunity. It was really fun. I went to different posts, warrior posts, educational posts, different each time. And I've recommended the military to many people over the years because it teaches you patriotism, teaches you, I don't know, how to live, teaches you to be fit too. I would train each year for the Army fitness test, probably the only person who did that, but I wanted to do that. And it then when Iraqi freedom started, when would that be? Around 2003, I got called up for duty for the mobilization. I went to Walter Reed Hospital, and I'd been at full colonel for several years by that time. They deployed the chief and deputy chief, so I ended up being the ranking person. And what a hoot that was. It was great. Every single day I would treat somebody, anesthetize somebody whose name people would recognize. You know, I met President Bush and other people at that time, and it was just great. So I recommend the military, and it was an important part of my life.
Well, speaking of names you'd recognize, in your long, high-profile career, you've actually had the opportunity to work alongside many of the most prominent anesthesiologists that everyone's heard of. Do any of them stand out to you as being exceptional personalities that would have lessons for leadership that we really need right now?
Oh, I was so fortunate. Because I had an early academic career, I was able to get speaking opportunities very early. So I met a number of people that were near the ends of their career. So I remember one time I spoke, I was at a meeting, and the senior speaker was John Adriani, who had published several textbooks at the time, and I was far and away the most junior person there. But he was so kind to me. He was a Southern gentleman, and what I learned from that was, I have good feelings about him. It's about the only time I ever met him, but I have great feelings of that, and I learned how politeness and kindness are worth a lot. Let's see, another person that I would say that I met at that time would be Perry Volpitto. He was president of the ASA long time ago, and we were. I was speaking. I think he lived in Georgia. I was speaking somewhere in Georgia, and he invited me to visit his hospital, and I did, and we bonded over the love of anesthesia. He took me in the operating room, would ask me questions, and then listen, and we talked about our love of anesthesia equipment. And I have warm feelings about him from that. And of course, I would say, Robert Drips would be somebody that I would put on that list. We talked a little bit about him. Another one whom I met, that I'm only naming people, there's a lot of people that have helped me. I'm only naming people that are no longer alive, but Bernie Wechsler was a ASA president. He was the first president that I'm aware of that really linked the practice of anesthesia with the business of anesthesia. It's because he was an early convert to the idea of ambulatory surgery centers and the business of them. He was very nice to me. He was, after going through an MBA program, and I had felt, well, I know a little bit about business. Actually, I didn't, but I do a little textbook about that. He wrote, Dr. Wechsler published some article, and I remember critiquing it, sending a critique, and instead of being annoyed with me, he said, well, that's great. We're forming a committee that was the initial practice management committee. He put me on there. And I learned from that, if somebody is criticizing you, the best thing to do is join forces with them, listen to them. And so I have great respect for him, and I think I learned from that.
Now, you've been very involved with the ASA, but you've also been involved with a number of organizations within anesthesia under the umbrella, the West Virginia Society of Anesthesiologists, the IARS, to name a couple. What drew you to these organizations?
The idea of being where the decisions are made to influence anesthesia. It may be my generation too, because there are many other organizations I belonged. When I stayed in Alabama after I left Fort Rucker. I became president of the Alabama Society and met all the people at University of Alabama. Got to know them. Gunther Corson, who a very colorful person who helped introduce ketamine into practice. Let me see. Another one would be the American Red Cross. I somehow got involved with them, and they needed speakers for crystalloid colloid. They're the largest manufacturers of albumin. And I said, oh, I can do that. Not knowing how to do that, but I've spent a lifetime saying, yes, I can do that, and then figuring out how to do it. And so that was great. And all of these societies, and the ones you mentioned and others, I learned more from them than I gave to them. So it's just been a great collaboration. And I think the idea of meeting people who are influencers, networking with them, and changing the specialty are the reasons to join.
Now, you've been very involved with the West Virginia Society of Anesthesiologists. What would you say your major contributions have been to that society and that state?
I love the West Virginia Society, probably, and I've always been a volunteer to do whatever needs to be done. I think the first year I was there, which would be 91, they had a meeting, their annual meeting. The person who organized it couldn't go at the last minute, said, well, you run it. And then next thing I knew, I was in charge. So for whatever that would be, almost 30 years, I've run the meeting. And it's great because I got to know all the speakers, invited them, set it up, and it was the days when there were no digital opportunities. You went to meetings to get your education, and so we had and I could hold them at the Greenbrier. So we had meetings of over 100 people, and it was probably that's the best thing I've done for the State Society was running the meetings. But I've done a lot of other things. It's a small state, and you can get to know people there. So I got to know most of the politicians at the time, and was able to influence some of the legislation. So that was something else that helped.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the advocacy, which has been a big part of your engagement within the societies. Can you tell us about advocacy at the West Virginia level?
We have a difficult state, difficult from the standpoint of the nurse anesthetists there are 3 to 4 times more nurses than there are physicians. So once scope of practice battles came in, I got heavily involved with that. And I'm proud of the fact that for the last 7 years, there have been independent practice bills introduced in West Virginia, and we've basically defeated them. We've passed a law that protects patients it's a title law. Nurses cannot call themselves doctors in a patient setting in West Virginia. They have to accurately identify who they are. So I got involved both at the state level, but I also got to know our governors and our senators and our representatives. We had 3 Congress people at one time. We have 2 now. At one time, if you can believe it, I had anesthetized both senators in the state and the governor. So I had a few chips that I could play.
Yeah, that might give you a little influence over matters. You advocated incredibly hard for the Medicare Anesthesiology Teaching Funding Restoration Act of 2007. Can you tell us a little bit more about that particular piece of legislation, why it's important and why it was worth fighting for and what it did?
Yes, Brian, it's a reason that 2 of us are here right now. That was an existential threat to the specialty of anesthesia. It goes back to the founding of Medicare. When the Medicare fee schedule was first developed, it paid physicians. The nurse anesthetists politicked a few years later and got the right to bill Medicare, and they were paid at the same rate. The ASA did not oppose that. Then Medicare's always financially challenged. A few years later, in one of their desires to save money, they came up with the idea that they would reduce payments for teaching residents by half. And the rule had been that you could teach 2 residents, 2 nurses, and get full payment. Well, when they reduced the payments for teaching residents, what they did to get full payment, you had to do 1-to-1 supervision, but they did not change the nursing ratio. So what happened then, hospitals quickly figured out that if they trained nurses, they got twice the payment than they would get if they trained residents. So over several years, the number of residency programs in the United States decreased by 2 to 3 to 4 programs each year, while the number of nurse training programs increased by 2 to 3 to 4 per year. If something didn't happen, potentially there would be almost no physician anesthesiologists because there'd be none in training. So we had to correct that. and changing Medicare policy is very hard. It's very political. It took a lot of work, and I'm very proud of what happened. Other people had worked on that for a couple years, and I got involved then. They needed the Medicare policy, payment policy has to come out of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. The head of that was Jay Rockefeller. And I had gotten to know Jay Rockefeller. I'd anesthetized him. We published together. He had an interest in anesthesia. And when we needed help, he introduced that Medicare Teaching Act and he pledged to support it, and he got his legislative aide to call all the other senators, and he is probably the single most important person in getting it passed. Of course, it was a group effort, so there were a lot of other people that did that, but I feel very proud of that and the fact that we basically saved the specialty.
Well, thanks for all your work in that regard. I think a lot of people find dealing with the government to be a pretty frustrating experience. Is there any key, do you think, to having success in these legislative efforts?
Well, of course, one of the keys is getting to know your legislators, and that was easy. For many years, our congressman was from Wheeling. I became good friends with him, and my wife, who's a nurse, became good friends with his wife, who was a nurse. So we, at the congressional level, had good support. And of course, I knew both of our senators. At that time, it would have been Senator Byrd and Senator Rockefeller. And I just, made the investment. I think that's it. I'm sure it's easier. I've been lucky in life. I'm sure it's easier in a small state than a large state. But, I spent time on it and got it to work.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your involvement with the Wood Library Museum, which is kind of what we have mostly in common these days. What initially drew you to the Wood Library Museum?
Well, I would say initially would be a visit as a resident to the ASA headquarters in Park Ridge, Illinois, the former headquarters. Now, I was a resident, and this would have been early 1970s. There was I visited there, and Patrick Sim, who was a new director there, met me, talked with me, and every time I visited him, or the museum, saw him, say at the ASA annual meeting, he remembered my name, remembered my background, and would make some comment about it. What a spectacular thing. I was a resident when that started, so it made me really respect the Wood Library Museum. Then, as I said, I've been fortunate. I was vice president of the ASA for a few years, and what I particularly liked was we had before board meetings, we had a dinner between the administrative council and the trustees of the Wood Library Museum. It was one of my favorite dinners. They were well organized, we talked. I looked forward to that each time. Then I was fortunate to be appointed as a trustee, and I think it was a little over a decade ago. And so it's just been a great time together. I've learned a lot.
So what have been some of the surprises you've seen as far as the Wood Library Museum goes?
The movement from paper-based education to digital. We started digitizing our records, and I can remember when we talked about we have to have a website, got a website, And wow, we get hundreds of hits a day. People from all over the world are looking at items from the Wood Library Museum. It's just spectacular. So I would say that that would be one of the things that's most changed. And of course, if you're talking about that, I would say finances is always an issue. We helped pay from our reserve funds for the ASA building in Schaumburg, and the ASA pays us back interest for that. So we were treated fairly, but then we went into the ASA has needed funds for many other things. So money has always been tight, and I think that would be a challenge, the tightness. I think seemed like there was unlimited money 20 years ago. Now there seems to be something that we need to really pay attention to.
So how do you think the Wood Library Museum adds value to ASA membership for the general members of ASA?
Oh, it is spectacular. Well, if you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you are or where you're going. So history is really important. I can give you a practical thing that happened was a couple years ago in our scope of practice issues. For some reason, nurses in our state hit on the idea that they had invented anesthesia. So they put up a billboard, we're the original inventors of anesthesia. Well, that's wrong. If you know history and you know everything from Crawford Long to the Ether Dome, I mean, there weren't any nurses there. So by knowing history, I could, on my feet, articulate some of our history and educate people. So there are many reasons to know history.
Well, you've really been in medicine a long time. Actually, I would consider it to be a really exceptional period in medicine. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in medicine in the whole that have affected anesthesia the most?
What's happened in medicine that's affected anesthesia is the advancement of surgery. When I started, an open gallbladder operation with a common bile duct expiration had a very significant mortality rate, maybe as high as 10% if they opened the common bile duct. And people, because of the subcostal incision, patients couldn't breathe right for 2 months afterwards. Now, with robotic or endoscopic cholecystectomies, people can go home the next day. And with the ERCPs, the endoscopic retrograde extraction of bile stones, we do that as an outpatient. It is just absolutely incredible to me. If you'd asked me when I started, was that possible, I wouldn't have known that. Now, if you talk about what's changed, I've been in anesthesia now for 60 years. So when I started, I dripped ether and used cyclopropane. The protocols that go with using flammable and explosive agents are just foreign to everybody now. What had to happen in the operating rooms, it's totally changed. I mean, we couldn't use electrocautery in those days. I remember when electrocautery really came in. So I would say those are two of the advances. Of course, the pace of technology right now is just incredible.
So what would you say are the 3 greatest advances you've seen in the practice of anesthesiology in the last 60 years?
Greatest changes, well, first of all, the change from flammable to non-flammable. That allowed a lot of equipment to come into operating rooms, a lot of electrical equipment. Operating rooms could be constructed totally differently. I would say when we started, most anesthesia was really inhalational. Now I would say it is largely intravenous, and it has allowed TIVA techniques and just intravenous medicines has really advanced anesthesia. So that has really changed a lot of things. And then the introduction of so many medicines that take care of all those side effects that we had, whether it's nausea, pain techniques, and the use of ultrasound has really improved regional anesthesia and blocks. I can remember priding myself on having a pretty good block rate. They were successful, but then learning how to, if the blocks were a little marginal, how to get the patient through. Well, nowadays, blocks are perfect. They work, and so those are some of the things that have just totally changed anesthesia.
Yeah, one of my partners likes to say that he's never had a block that didn't work. He's had some that wore off before the case finished, but none that didn't work. So you've often been in the room when important decisions have been made regarding medicine and anesthesia. What challenges do you predict will medicine face in the next couple of years? What do you think the greatest challenges are going to be for medicine as a whole?
Well, what I predict is there's going to be a continued concentration of major surgery in fewer institutions. It's so hard to get everything together in one spot to have quality. I think that is one of the things that's going to happen. And how to make that happen is a challenge. I think that the increasing use of digital technology and the application of artificial intelligence in there is going to greatly improve quality and patient safety. I can see real-time notices from AI analysis of my anesthesia record with notice to me that, hey, look out for something and consider doing this. I think how we navigate that is a challenge. And then I would just say the education, the pace of technology is so quick right now that how to educate people on that is a challenge. I'm only working a few days a month right now, kind of at the end of a career, and I'm thankful that I'm able to do that. If I'm gone for 2 weeks and come back to the operating room, something has changed. The protocols have changed. There's a new medicine. Something has changed. How we handle people with GLP-1 drugs has changed, or there's some new equipment. And so I'm continually now I'm running faster and faster, trying to keep up with whatever the changes are. And I don't know how we incorporate that into anesthesia, but it's something that we need to do.
So what do you see the greatest headwinds to our specialty are going to be over the next couple of years?
Well, the greatest headwind right now is the enormous waste of resources, time, and money that we spend on advocacy efforts. We are spending, through our PAC dollars, about $1 million a year advocating for anesthesiologists. The nurses are spending about $1 million in their PAC funds advocating for their independent practice. what a waste of money and resources. We need to somehow get on the same page. We both want patients to do well, and I think quality and safety are important. We're too tied down with these parochial issues, and I see them getting worse right now. I don't know how we solve it, but the politics is too great in anesthesia right now. If I could be part of that solution, I would love to be. I think about that sometimes, but we'll see how that plays out.
Be a little more patient-centered, it sounds like. So looking over the body of literature that you've published during your career, it's very diverse. I see things like costs of medicine, the dogs in the operating room, other topics, historical topics. Is there any subject that, when you're writing something, really excites you, gives you more satisfaction than anything else?
Yes. Now, some of this may be because it's been a long time since I trained, so first publications are really science. Maybe as I've moved away from basic science days, I've become more interested in people. I love looking around and seeing what's affecting people, patients, people that work in the operating room. How is what we're doing impacting their lives? The ethics of anesthesia. So the dog article came about when I first saw a patient bring a dog into the pre-op area, and I said, "Hey, what are the rules for that?" And nobody knew. So I looked into that, but I've, something I'm really proud of is publishing several articles on the people, the human side of anesthesia. So I've got, I think, 3 Piece of My Mind articles in JAMA, which all have to do with the human side of medical practice. And I've got a few of those in other areas. They're almost creative writing projects, and I really enjoy that because anesthesia can be life and death to people. It's the greatest challenge many of them feel like they've experienced in their life. So writing about that, or also writing about the people who are providing the anesthesia and how it's affecting them, that's probably where my love is right now.
So talking about sort of the perspective on careers and work, there's a lot of talk about like this work-life balance these days, and you've really managed to stay very physically fit and active. I wonder if you could just comment on the impact that physical fitness has had on your personal and professional life.
Brian, it's been really important to me. I ran track and cross country in high school and college, recognized the importance of the physical fitness with the cognitive side, and have been a lifelong exerciser with that. And I think research would prove now the importance of that. It is, I may be a little too competitive, I don't know. I told you I trained for the fitness test in the military, and every year, I got a perfect score, and a couple years I got the highest score at the whole post where I was, and I take great pride in that. But life's been good to me. I've been fortunate to be that way, and I recommend that to everybody. I think that if you're exercising, you probably are sleeping well. You you're staying healthy. You get extra energy, and you can't be depressed if you're out running. It's probably the best antidepressant there is, And so it is my prescription to everybody. There's a little funny story about that. I was so enamored of that a few years ago, I've run the Boston Marathon a couple times. One of my friends from the Boston Marathon, Amby Burfoot, who was the longtime editor of Runner's World, and we talked about this theme. I said, we need to really, it's so important to people, let's write an article on it. So we did. I think I wrote it well. Very important to people. We sent it to the New England Journal because it seemed like something. Well, they didn't want it. So then I said, well, this is really important. We'll rewrite it. We sent it to JAMA, and they said, it's not really science. So we ended up publishing it in kind of a obscure journal, but it is still a message, and I'm wondering if I rewrote it and did a good job writing it, if I couldn't get it into one of the major journals today, because I do believe in it, and I think most people do.
Now, there's also a lot of concern these days about engagement in our specialty, especially among the young anesthesiologists, engagement, and there's things like burnout. Short of cloning you, what would you say is going to be the best way to get young people engaged in our specialty and to keep them actively participating throughout their entire career? What do you think is the best way to accomplish that?
I would say mentoring. Anesthesia is a huge specialty. There is a niche for everybody. Helping them find that niche is what you want. So if operating room protocols are a problem, there's pain medicine, there's preoperative area. I recently got a colleague into preoperative medicine, and that's really worked well for her. I think that people like to succeed, and they like to be told they're doing well, and they like to find their niche. And I think just helping them find that area and helping them succeed is what you need to do.
So, looking back, what would you say are the top 3 highlights of your long career?
Winning as a senior resident, winning the ASA resident research essay first prize, launched my career, gave me confidence, got me on those speaking circuits, and it was, when I went for my oral boards, my oral examiners commented on that and knew who I was. And so so I just really liked that. Then I would say maybe changing the, I would say winning the directorship from West Virginia under the old system, which was something I campaigned for. It was a battle. It was the system before there was every state had a director. There were fewer, I don't know, maybe 20, I'm not sure the number, but roughly that. And Virginia and West Virginia were the territory, and it was just, they're 7 times larger, Virginia than West Virginia. So it was just common knowledge that the West Virginia person was the alternate director, and whoever came from Virginia was the director. Well, one year I said, hey, let's change that, and I campaigned and won, and it was, I really felt good about that. And then, I don't know, another high point, I guess, would be getting elected to the, as ASA vice president and sitting in the administrative council. That was really something.
Are there any other final words of wisdom or thoughts that have come to you during the course of this talk we've had?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to work with people like you. That's a reason to be in anesthesia. There are what a great specialty it is. And I have just known so many people that have helped me for so long. And I just want everybody to find that. I think they can do that. And we talked about mentorship, and that is, I think that's what it takes.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor to be here with you today.